We've been keeping our eye on protests in Chicago, and we're just told that there are some scuffles developing between police and protesters here. You saw, it looks like this is a police bicycle. We were told that the officers were on bike, and at the point, it was mostly peaceful. This is a response to that video being released in Chicago that shows Officer Jason Van Dyke shooting and killing a 17-year-old, Laquan McDonald. Shot him 16 times when, from the video, it seems clear that McDonald was walking away from police officers when he was shot, and only one police officer among the 8 that were out there had fired off rounds. Okay, you're seeing here how intense the situation is now as police and protesters are up torso to torso. Lots of media there on the scene as well, holding up cameras, and of course cell phones have been instrumental. We've seen in many of these protests around the country when people go out for Black Lives Matter. All right, we just got this video in moments ago that shows the encounter in Chicago. I'm going to pause here so we can listen to the audio. Okay, so there you were seeing some tempers flaring on both sides, it appears. There are officers on bicycles. It's clear the officers who were on bikes escorting the protesters or riding along beside them because they have the helmets on. And then there are other patrol officers out with without helmets on, with warmer winter caps on. CBS News digital journalist Alex Pena is there at the scene. It looks like things now are calming down. Alex, any idea what led to that scuffle?
Yeah, well, in fact, in the last 10 minutes, that protest really took a turn for the negative. The protesters were walking down Michigan Street where they were effectively being guided by the police. And then possibly about 4 or 5 different protesters decided to break that police line, in which case they ran past the police with a bicycle on Michigan and Balboa and ran up a bridge. And the police officers essentially went into chase. They ended up meeting them at the middle of this bridge here, where all the other protesters followed, and I believe that is the clash that you're seeing now. It appeared to me that one of the protesters tried to actually grab, whether it was to take or to dismaneuver the bicycle of a police officer, in which case things began to get a little bit violent. The police officer began to push back. He started to pull the bike. A few people from both ends ended up grabbing this bicycle, and that's when everyone started sort of to clash in the middle of this bridge.
Okay, so we are seeing overhead shots right now. Can you give us a sense of where this is happening in Chicago?
It is actually just across the street from the Hilton, Chicago, in the downtown area. It is on the corner of Michigan and Balboa Street, and it's in the middle of a bridge. Okay. So, in fact, I believe the police officers did not want the protesters to go across the bridge, which is why they went into state.
They've, by the way, we can see now from the aerial shots that we're seeing, Alex, that they have arrested, it looks like 3 people. They're escorting 3 people away from that main group of protesters now on the bridge. And there, as the chopper comes up and over, you can see that this is the overpass. It looks like maybe train tracks down below, or is that the river in Chicago?
That's correct. Yeah, it is this bridge that's possibly over that river, and which is probably one of the reasons that the police didn't want the protesters to go over this bridge.
Okay,
I was on the front there and able to see two of the people become apprehended. I didn't see that third person, but right now everybody is chanting, "Let them go, let them go." So clearly they have taken some past their police line and into their custody.
Okay, I'm going to go back down to ground level now and listen in here for a minute. Alex, stay with us.
Yep. Assalamu alaikum. All is well, motherfucker. Oh yeah, real quick, stop being on bullshit with the Muslims too. Y'all tweaking on that shit.
Okay, so we're getting some of the, some angry protesters out there clearly using language that if there are small kids around, their parents aren't going to be happy about them hearing that. But, the tensions are running high here. I want to go back to what we saw today that has led to this moment. Back in October 2014, a teenager was shot and killed by police, 17-year-old Laquan McDonald. At the time, police said that he'd had a knife that the officer had fired because he felt threatened. And the video was released today, and what we saw was 17-year-old Laquan McDonald walking down the road away from the squad cars that had pulled in when Jason Van Dyke, we're told, opened fire and within seconds had unloaded 16 rounds into Laquan McDonald. This is graphic video, by the way, that shows the moment when this teenager goes down. So viewer discretion is advised at this point. And here you're seeing Laquan McDonald, again, falling to the ground. We're told that he was shot 16 times, and 13 of those times were when he was already on the ground. We're also told that the autopsy showed he was shot twice in the back. The autopsy discovered PCP in McDonald's system, which of course can make people act irrational. That might explain why he was behaving erratically, as was described by police when the shooting happened. And then more than a year later, charges are announced. The officer is indicted, stripped of his badge, stripped of his police powers, and he's facing murder charges. And it's not just Chicago authorities investigating here. The FBI is also involved. Now looking here live as the ambulance pulls up to the scene, you can see police in Chicago have this group of protesters blocked off at a bridge near the Hilton in downtown Chicago. This group had assembled before the video was released, and the sense was, Alex Pena, who's on the ground with us now. Alex, these people who had gathered were planning to protest regardless of what they saw in that video. Is that accurate?
That does seem to be the case. This was a Black Lives Matter protest. They were planning to protest Laquan McDonald, but again, they've been chanting slogans from all the previous police shootings. So whether or not that video was released today, I do believe that they plan on protesting the general police brutality in the nation right now. Granted, based off today and the announcements today and the indictments today, they did put the streets yelling Laquan's name. There's actually a fire truck pulling up to the middle of the bridge now. It looks like the protesters are going to sort of, you just give me a second. The protesters are here, and they seem to be in the way. I don't know if it's that they're blocking them or not.
Okay,
I did see a few protesters on the ground with some stuff. They might have fallen and scraped their knees, so there were some people with first aid kits. But there is a fire truck here now.
Okay, so on the other side of the bridge where all these protesters have gathered is Lakeshore Drive. And for folks who are familiar with Chicago, Grant Park, this is just south of Grant Park, or Grant Park is just south of this area? This is near Grant Park. Okay. At any rate, so you've got maybe 100, 150 or so protesters who've gathered out here, and a lot of cops. Does it look to you, Alex, like there are almost as many police officers as there are demonstrators?
At this point, I would say that they're not totally outnumbered, but there are certainly more protesters than there are police officers here. That's definitely the case. The police officers have more vehicles and there's more bicycles, but in terms of personnel, they're definitely outnumbered. It actually appears that there was a stretcher that was just brought out of the fire truck that pulled up here on the bridge.
What was pulled out of the fire truck?
It looks like there was a mobile stretcher that was just pulled out of the fire truck.
Okay. Well, we did see an ambulance as well, and we've seen 3 people being led away by police officers, looked like under arrest or detained for custody, detained for questioning, or they were being taken away from this main group of protesters. What we heard from the authorities in Chicago today was the plan to facilitate demonstrations that were peaceful, that obeyed officers' instructions. Clearly, Chicago was getting ready for protests in response to this video. And we had heard that there was some concern about how violent the protests might get because of the nature of the video. This is a live Periscope video that we're just getting in now as well, again, from a little bit of a different view of protesters here from people who were there. Social media, by the way, has played a huge role in the Black Lives Matter movement, from Ferguson through Baltimore, from what we saw in New York City, protesting police injustice, and that along the way, people had their cell phone cameras out and ready to document what they see as aggressive, inappropriate police behavior. Let's listen into this for a moment.
Why does a female gotta be a bitch? Why does a black female gotta be a bitch?
Okay, and just a warning too, because we're carrying this live, you know, you may hear obscenities in this point, so if you have small children around, just be cognizant of that if you're watching this unfold in Chicago. Again, at this point, this looks like a fairly small group of protesters. Alex, how long have they been out there, and not just the lead up to the protest itself, but the protest itself? How long have these folks been together, assembled as a group today?
Well, the video was released around 5:30-ish, and they were actually inside a building, you know, sort of their downtown headquarters. Then they hit the streets at 6 p.m., and that's where we're at right now. So they essentially made their way through the city, starting at 6, and then ended up on this bridge right now, linked arms facing away from the police, and there's essentially a front line linked facing towards the police. So all of this really started around 6 and ended here on the bridge. Well, it actually hasn't ended yet. It's still clearly in progression.
Okay, but in terms of where their march is going, it looks at this point like police have decided this is the end of the road for this particular march for justice, and so we wait and see what happens with demonstrators here. We'll keep our eye on this throughout the evening and into the morning hours if necessary. Alex Pena, thank you for being our eyes and ears on the ground. You're watching CBSN.